Hello, everybody. This is Miss Gina, Miss Lovett, Miss Lovett Jr., all those wonderful names for me. I'm here because I wanted to read to you guys my journal entry thing for April 9th's AMI work for 5th grade social studies. I really had fun with this assignment. I knew I wanted to do it once I read the prompt because it sounded like so cool to have this opportunity to write something that's a little bit more creative. It's not an essay, it's really just my thoughts and my feelings flowing out onto the page. I'm going to go ahead and read the directions for you before I explain more of what I did and read to you guys what I wrote. Directions. You are living through a historical event. The historical event they're talking about is quite obviously the pandemic that's going on, the coronavirus, the COVID-19 disease. Write a diary entry about what is happening in our world and how you are doing. You may write on the back as well. Keep in mind, this is not a report on the event, but the thoughts and feelings of someone living through it. Your diary should include key terms and people involved with the event. You'll notice I have underlined diary entry, thoughts and feelings, key terms, and people involved with the event. Why I did this is I wanted to make sure I understood what we're doing. We are writing a diary entry. We are not writing an essay. We don't need the structure of a Foursquare. We don't need a thesis. We don't have to worry about transition sentences. This is our thoughts and feelings of what is going on now. However, we do need to include some key terms and people involved with the event. So to keep in mind the key terms and the people that I wanted to have in my writing, I wrote them up at the top left-hand corner: shelter in place, self-quarantine, coronavirus, COVID-19, the World Health Organization and CDC, and our governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchins. So, while I said that it doesn't need to be organized like an essay, that doesn't mean that creative writing doesn't have a structure to it. When you think of a story, there's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. Or in this case, with a journal entry, it is less structured, it's more flowing, but we still want to get some main thoughts across. We still want it to flow almost like a story where we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we don't have to worry about grammar as much, which is a win. Woo! We don't have to type this. I wrote it out using my Apple Pen on here. So please excuse the chicken scratch of my handwriting. It's pretty bad, but I'll read it to you in case you're having issues following along with me. If it wasn't for my phone, let's start at the very beginning. Dear Journal, if it wasn't for my phone, I'd have no idea what day it is. Mondays, Tuesdays, weekends, what even is a day anymore? I woke up around 8:30 like most days, cuddled the dogs, and checked in on my town. Meaning my virtual town in Animal Crossing. My Instagram feed is still an endless pit of Tiger King memes, bored in the house TikToks. I'm sure you guys have seen those. The TikToks where they have that little song in there of I'm bored in the house and in the house bored. Bored in the house and in the house bored. And complaints from others during this time of self-quarantine. I was shocked, even confused when I heard there was a pandemic. How could a disease with cold-like symptoms pose this much of a threat? This isn't Ebola or the bubonic plague. There's no blood coming out of people's eyes or grotesque pus-filled boils. Just a cough and a fever. What was all this fuss about? Then news of schools getting shut down. Just for a few weeks, then a couple more weeks, then for the rest of the school year. Suddenly, here I am, essentially jobless, cuddling dogs, and playing video games with a nagging thought in my mind. Is the end of the world really going to be over a cough and a fever? Okay, maybe that's too dramatic. And then I wrote on the back, air quotes. Okay, maybe that was too dramatic. The world isn't ending, but this is bigger than what I first believed. This is real. This is more than a cough and a fever. This is a wake-up call. We were not prepared. Our hospitals were not prepared. Our government was not prepared. Our world was not prepared. Coronavirus, or more formally called COVID-19, has a R0 of 1.4 to 2.5, meaning an infected person can then infect up to 2 more people. If we do not follow the guidelines set in place by the CDC and our Governor Asa Hutchins, millions of people could and would die. The people most at risk are those with underlying health issues and the elderly. While I may not have to worry about contracting this disease, this is bigger than me. I have to do my part to help everyone. We all have to do our part, so staying home isn't a bad thing, it's good. I might get bored of all the coronavirus-related posts and memes and news, but what's most important is that I'm safe. My family is safe, my doggies are safe, and I'm helping keeping others safe. So my main point here was talking about how I came to realize that this is a big issue. And I'm not sure if you guys shared this sentiment, but even though I've had lots of science classes, I love learning about viruses and reading books about pandemics, zombie apocalypses, all that good stuff. It still was kind of hard to believe that this is actually going on, that this is something we need to take seriously. And it is, and that's what my journal entry was about, just kind of my thoughts during this historical event. Your guys's are probably way different because this is something that's about us. I hope you enjoyed what I wrote, and before I wrap it up, I just want to talk a little bit about the creative writing process because that's something I really, really love to do. And as I mentioned before, we don't have to worry about grammar as much. You get to write how you feel, and you want it to come across as natural, as interesting to read. And how you do that, not only do you have to use fun language and imagery and depicting things such as sight and sound and smell and taste and all that good stuff using similes and metaphors, and it sounds really confusing, but most simply, you just need to have sentence structure variation. What I mean by that is not every sentence needs to be long and having lots of contractions and coordinating conjunctions and all that. Some can be short. Also, when you're writing an essay, you might have heard that you don't want every sentence to start the same way. I believe that this is important because it is. I believe that the author was saying this because they did. You try to stay away from that. You try to have some variation in how you start your sentences. However, with creative writing, you can break the rules. You can purposefully start sentences the same way over and over again. What that does is it builds up this repetition. It makes your writing have this staccato nature to it, such as my second line for this side. This is real. This is more than a cough and fever. This is a wake-up call. It gets that flow to it, that staccato, the bump. There's a beat when you read it. And then I go on to say, we are not prepared. Our hospitals were not prepared. Our government was not prepared. While my sentences start differently, they all end with we're not prepared. That again gives us that beat, the underlying rhythm to our writing. Using the repetition calls to focus on what you are saying. You see it a lot in poetry, but you'll also notice it in books. It's something that I love to do in my own writing, and it's something I suggest you try out. When we're doing writing, even essays, you don't want them to be boring. You want it to have some life to it. And a great way to breathe life into your writing is to just change it up a little. When we talk, we don't have conversations that are all sentences that are at least one line long or 5 words long. We don't do that. We sometimes have run-on sentences. We sometimes don't finish our thought, like I'm sure I have a lot in this video, and your writing can reflect that. You can have some sentences that are longer, that have different styles to them. Like here, I switch to being more factual. I even bring up the R naught, which is a scientific term that describes pretty much the effectiveness of a disease. How easily is it going to spread? And then I switch back to the more informal of talking about myself and I and we. And that little switch there is just to help show how I started to realize that this is really important. Okay, I started rambling, but I really love writing. I would love to read what you guys have written if you want to share it, or if you share it with my mom during your Google Meets, and then she can tell me all about it. Yep, have fun, and even without schoolwork, if you want to write on your own, do it. If you want to share it with me, I'd love to read it, give you any feedback, or just have a nice little community of all of us enjoying to write. That was April Knight's AMI work, and bye-bye.